Do you believe there was once an empire greater than Rome, yet almost forgotten by the world? I thought I knew history pretty well, until the name Persia made me stop and rethink everything. Not through textbooks, but through fragments of stories, fleeting images, and a strange feeling I couldn't ignore. A place that feels familiar, yet distant, and deeply misunderstood. Most people hear about Iran through headlines, politics, and tension. But few ever tell you about another Iran, deeper, older, and profoundly human. An Iran where an empire once stretched from Greece to India. More than 2,500 years ago, people spoke about freedom, dignity, and coexistence. It sounds hard to believe, but it's real. And what intrigued me the most wasn't just its greatness, but the question, why don't we hear more about it? Was it forgotten by history, or simply never told the right way? This journey is not just about a country. It's about how we see the world, and what we think we already understand. From the busy streets of a modern capital, to the silent ruins of an empire that once stood at the top of the world. From lush forests along the Caspian coast, to deserts where people learned to live with wind and sand, every place tells a story you may have never heard before. And maybe, by the end of this journey, you won't see Iran the same way again. Because sometimes, what's most forgotten is exactly what deserves to be remembered. To understand how such a powerful empire could be forgotten, we have to go back more than 2,500 years. From the rugged lands of Persia, a man emerged who would change how the world was governed. Cyrus the Great was not just a conqueror. He built an empire stretching from the Middle East to India, a scale almost unimaginable at the time. But what made him different was not what he conquered. It was how he treated those lands. Instead of imposing control, he allowed people to keep their religion, culture, and laws. A mindset that even the modern world is still striving toward. The clearest evidence of this was carved into the Cyrus cylinder, a small artifact carrying a powerful message about human rights and dignity. Compared to others, the Persian Empire wasn't just larger than many civilizations of its time, it was also ahead in governance and multicultural thinking. So why isn't it as widely remembered as Rome or Greece? The answer lies in how history is told. Much of what we know about Persia comes from ancient Greek sources. And in those stories, Persia was often portrayed as the enemy. Wars like Marathon and Thermopylae shaped Western perceptions for centuries. When you hear only one side of a story, you only see half the truth. And over time, the other half begins to fade. And this doesn't just happen to Persia. Many great civilizations have been simplified or forgotten because they weren't the final victors. The lesson here isn't just about an empire. It's about how we understand the world. What you know is often only what was chosen to be told. And sometimes, the most important stories are the ones left out. But Persia isn't just an idea or a distant memory. It was once a real power, with cities, people, and very real ambitions. To truly understand that greatness and how it eventually fell, we need to step into the heart of that empire, where everything once began. And that story is far from peaceful. As we step into the heart of the ancient Persian Empire, you begin to notice something very different from what we usually imagine about power. It wasn't about domination or display, but about building a system that connects. Under Darius the Great, the empire didn't just expand, it became structured and efficient. He divided the empire into regions called satrapies, each with local autonomy but accountable to the center. If that sounds familiar, it's because it resembles how modern federal systems operate. To connect everything, they built an extensive road network, most notably the Royal Road. A courier could travel thousands of kilometers in days, something nearly impossible in the ancient world. This didn't just help governance, it created a continuous flow of trade and culture. And at the center of it all stood Persepolis. Not an ordinary city, but a stage of power and diplomacy. Here, envoys from across the empire gathered, bringing gifts and stories from their lands. The stone reliefs don't tell stories of war. They tell stories of diversity.
It's built to show up when no one else can. And sometimes, the price of always being there is the rust we see. That was the empire at its peak. But like every great power in history, reaching the peak often means the cracks begin to form. And then, from the west, a new force emerged. Alexander the Great, young, ambitious, and unwilling to stand outside history. He didn't just want to conquer, he wanted to reshape the world order. The battles were fast, decisive, and unforgiving. And then, a moment of symbolism unfolded. Persepolis, the symbol of the empire, was set ablaze. It wasn't just the destruction of a city. It marked the end of an era. But what's fascinating is, even as the empire fell, its ideas continued to live on. From governance and trade to respecting cultural diversity. They didn't disappear, they evolved. And perhaps that is the true strength of a civilization. Not to last forever, but to leave a mark on how the world continues to function. The lesson here is clear. True power isn't about how much you control, but what remains after you are gone. And when you look at modern Iran today, you might begin to wonder, how have those legacies transformed? Did the values that built a great empire still exist in everyday life? To find out, we have to step out of the past and step into an Iran that feels very different, yet strangely familiar. As we leave behind the ancient ruins, it might feel like Persia's story has already ended. But in reality, it never truly disappeared. It simply changed form and continues to live on in a very different Iran today. Let's begin in Tehran, a city of millions, constantly in motion. If you only know Iran through the news, you might imagine a place of constant tension and chaos. But when people actually experience it, many are surprised to find a functioning, everyday life. Streets are busy, cafes are open, and people go to work and school like in any other major city. A young student in Tehran might start the day scrolling social media, meeting friends, and dreaming about the future. But at the same time, they face pressures you rarely see on screen. Many young people say that even as income rises, their quality of life declines due to rising costs. Some even cut back on simple things like eating out or buying coffee. And that's a side of Iran you rarely see. On social media, you might see rooftop parties, modern fashion, and moments that feel very Western. But those images represent only a small slice of reality. Most life is quieter, more ordinary, and sometimes more difficult. What's fascinating is that many Iranians live in two worlds at once. A public world where they follow social rules, and a private world where they express who they truly are. This creates a society that is complex but deeply human. If you look closely, Iran may not be as different as you think. Young people here worry about jobs, relationships, and their future. They want freedom, self-expression, and a better life. And like anywhere else, there are stark differences between social classes. Some live in comfort and modernity, while many others struggle just to get by. The lesson here may be simple, but often overlooked. A country cannot be understood through headlines alone, and people cannot be reduced to a single narrative. Iran is not just politics or conflict. It is millions of people living, hoping, and adapting every day. And perhaps that complexity makes Iran harder to understand, but more worth exploring. Because once you begin to see the people behind the headlines, the story changes completely. But Iran is not just crowded cities or modern life. It is also a land of striking contrasts in nature and culture. And to truly understand that, we need to leave the city behind and step into a completely different Iran where nature tells its own stories. As you leave the crowded streets behind, you begin to realize Iran is not just about cities and people. It is a land of extremes where nature shapes how people live. And sometimes, just a few hours of travel can completely transform everything around you. In the north, near the Caspian Sea, the landscape turns lush and humid. Dense forests stretch across the land, unlike any desert image you may associate with Iran. Here, farmers grow rice, tea, and fruit, living by the rhythm of the seasons. And deep within those forests, the Persian leopard still quietly survives. But as you move away from that green region, the landscape shifts again. In the west, the Zagros Mountains rise like a massive wall of stone. Life here is not easy, yet people have learned to adapt. Nomadic tribes migrate with the seasons, guiding their herds along paths used for centuries. For them, migration is not just survival, it is tradition. Children grow up on horseback, learning to read the land before they read books. But that way of life is becoming harder as modernization reshapes the landscape. And as the journey continues toward the center, you encounter a completely different world. Vast deserts stretch endlessly, where heat and harshness test human limits. In Yazd, people have learned to live in harmony with extreme conditions. In Yazd, people have learned to live in harmony with extreme conditions. Wind catchers were built centuries ago to cool the air naturally. What's fascinating is that whether in forests, mountains, or deserts, people here have always found ways to live, not by fighting nature, but by adapting to it. And that may be the most defining trait of this land. A resilience shaped over thousands of years. The lesson from Iran is not just in its differences, but in how those differences coexist. A country can be both lush and arid, both modern and ancient. And it is these contrasts that define its identity. But if nature tells part of the story, then culture and the human spirit complete it. And to understand that more deeply, we need to go somewhere where beauty is not just seen, but felt through poetry, gardens, and quiet moments. A place where history is not only recorded, but lived and felt every day. And that is where our journey continues. As this journey begins to close, there is an Iran you rarely see on screen, yet it exists vividly in everyday life. It's not about headlines, not about conflict, but about small, quiet moments that carry deep meaning. In Shiraz, you might find a group of people sitting in a garden, reading poetry as the sun sets. No grand stage, no bright lights, just poetry and presence. And within those words, people find something deeply familiar: emotion, hope, and questions about life. Hafez, one of Iran's greatest poets, is still read and quoted every day. His poetry is not just about love, but about how people face the world. And what's remarkable is that those words are not confined to the past. They live on in how people speak, think, and feel today. In Iran, culture is not something to display. In Iran, culture is not something to display. It is something to live with every day. You can see it in gardens where people go to rest and reflect, or in simple conversations over tea where stories pass from one generation to another. A clear example is how Iranians use the poetry of Saadi as moral guidance in daily life. Verses about human unity are even engraved at the United Nations headquarters. And that tells us something important. Iran is not just a country with a great past. It is a place where those values continue to influence the world. Many assume that ancient values like poetry and tradition no longer matter in the modern world. But the reality is the opposite. In a world that is increasingly fast and noisy, it is the slow and meaningful things that become most valuable. And perhaps that is why Iran still matters today. Not because of power or politics, but because of what it reminds us. That no matter where we are always searching for meaning, connection, and something greater than ourselves. The final lesson of this journey may be simple. Don't rush to believe what you only see on the surface. Don't rush to believe what you only see on the surface. Take the time to listen, understand, and feel. Because every place holds more stories than you imagine. But in ordinary people, living very real lives every day. Iran is not a story that has ended. It is still unfolding. And perhaps the most important part of that story is how we choose to see it. Thank you for being part of this journey. And maybe in the next journey, we'll uncover another story that was once forgotten but never truly gone.